If you want to think about its highest level, they have to trust those leaders at the top. They have to trust the mid-level managers, the frontline managers, to do what they say they're going to do, to follow through. And the opposite of that would be, hey, this is the process of the month club. That would be, I don't trust we're going to follow through. And also shared purpose is a part of that, which is we really clarified where we're going.
Hey, it's Nikki, Llewellyn Gregory, and you're on Gut Plus Science. You're in for a fast-paced, storytelling, action item-rich leadership growth experience. I hope you make this podcast a habit. I consider it a leadership mentoring tool. Learning together makes us better together, and that is how we change the world around us. Let's get to it.
Hey, it's Nikki. Recently, you heard from Heather Haas. She and I got into the nitty-gritty of Advisa's culture system framework. I learned a lot in that. It was all around how to make culture stick. The systems we choose and implement and how we implement them is so critical. Or we experience that like throwing spaghetti at the wall thing and, hey, this isn't working. And we're getting around that, working with Advisa. Excited about it. Today, we're diving into real-world stories of transformation from those 5 systems that Heather and I discussed. And I'm here with another leader from Advisa, BJ McKay. BJ has stories for days as he works right alongside the transformation in the trenches with these leaders. We love good stories on this show, BJ. And through these stories, I think the listeners and we're going to walk away with practical insights on what it really takes, like in action, understanding what that looks like to shift culture and how to measure the impact and like really know how we're doing beyond the feel good moments, if you will, or the seasons of good. So BJ, welcome. Heather taught us about the ATLAS acronym on our last episode. So hopefully everyone's listened to that. But if they haven't or need a refresher, maybe we tap into the ATLAS model really quick before we dive into the stories. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm happy for a refresh and really happy to be here, Nikki. Excited to kind of share more and kind of get to that ground level where I live and breathe and connect with those folks that are in the work every single day. So ATLAS, in brief, and you'll see me weave through some of these as we likely chat today based on where we drive, is A is activation from above. In short, anything that actually has cultural transformation has to start at the top and be lived out and followed by the top. And by the top, everyone listening, I mean the top. Okay, not almost there. T is trust and shared purpose. And Heather probably baked that out, but if you want to think about its highest level, they have to trust those leaders at the top. They have to trust the mid-level managers, the frontline managers, to do what they say they're going to do, to follow through. And the opposite of that would be, hey, this is the process of the month club. That would be, I don't trust we're going to follow through. And also shared purpose is a part of that, which is we really clarified where we're going and we're on board with it. The L is leader effectiveness, which is having an actual definition of, am I or am I not an effective leader here? Rather than, I always call it the word cloud, ask everyone, give me the 3 attributes of an effective leader here. You probably would not get a ton of consistency, although you would get a lot of great things, but no one knows what they're aiming at. A is actionable people data, which means can we take some of this subjective, I get a feel or I get a sense, Nikki, and turn it into something that's more tangible. And you'll see that that really helps the conversation with activation from above, making the case with data through a variety of means. S is systems that support leaders. So any systems in place, and that's a little broad, we know when you lay that out there. But when you think about systems and think about people systems. Are we making it easy and are we moving obstacles for them to produce this new behavior that we want in the culture? Or are we removing them, adding wind behind people's sails where things are engaging and fun and they start happening naturally versus the constant, we're making a push. We're trying to push. I'm like, okay. But like, how long have you pushed at anything in your life? At some point you're going to burn out, and we might even talk about burnout later. So that's that's our ATLAS acronym in short.
Thank you so much for revisiting that. And I may have said earlier, I was calling these systems, they're really, your core initiatives. They're the key components, and it's all wrapped up in the how we make these systems that work for us. Like BJ just said, like, how are we getting everyone rowing in the same direction? It's not just up to like 2 people who are constantly reminding and nudging. And going back to the problem that Heather and I are working on solving is the amount of leaders that are stuck. How do we get unstuck? And so let's dive in. We're going to hear about so many stories, but I want to start with the understanding of the difference between transformational work and program implementation.
I want to linger on transformation. And I challenge anybody listening to this, and Nikki, I'll challenge you too. All right, you've been transformed. Like you went through a transformative experience. X, Y, and Z happened in my life, and I was transformed as a result of it. You could pause now and think about it. Unpack a story that ended in transformation. When you walk back through that process, it likely, is this program? That is far too simplistic and unfair to anybody listening to say that's what transformed you. It's just unlikely. What likely happened was something that was probably pretty uncomfortable, pretty jarring, pretty challenging to a current routine or behavior set you up, challenging to existing relationships. I could go on and on as to what makes transformation happen. And I sometimes refer back to like how a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. They go into the chrysalis and they literally turn into liquid. That just always struck me as I'm like, yeah, it's about how it felt. That's like, and then I came out something different. So when we take transformation, we put programs over here. Programs are not unimportant, but they have to be a subset of some bigger, broader meaning that's laid out there for yourself and for your leaders. That's going to necessitate the bumps on the elbow, the scratches, the burns, the tough work of change and earning transformation.
I have just a really quick story. And if you want to lean into this at all as you go into your stories today, when you said, hey, Nikki, I'm going to challenge you too, I was like, he's going to put me on the spot for a transformational situation. The first thing that was coming to mind is I think I was 27 and a mentor of mine that I highly respected said, I challenge you to go through this leadership program. It's a 3-day lock-in. You spend 2 nights there and blah, blah, blah. If you do this, you're really investing in yourself and all this. And I'm like, okay, challenge accepted. The outcome of that, if I look back, I will tell you, I cried multiple times. I showed up as my worst self. There was one time where I walked over in the corner with my arms crossed and like in reflection, I look back and it was like, I'm embarrassed. Like I'm embarrassed about how I showed up, but it was this highly immersive, like we are going to do a lot in the next, 56 hours or whatever it was. But when you were saying transformation, because it was like my transformational weekend, I'm like, let me tell you, I saw the worst of myself. I saw some of the best of myself, but on the other side of it, this is many years ago. So many lessons happened there that taught me about me that I had never looked in the mirror to see. So it was my most like loud transformational situation.
Well, I love that. Just leaning in a couple of things when you brought up the best and the worst of you, if anyone's even listening, we might get this more later. That's how you know you're in it. If you're not vacillating between these two sides, you're probably not in a transformational experience. You could be in a validating one, you could be in a comfortable one, you could be in but you're not in a transformative. And a brief one for me actually involves Heather, if you want to hear a fun story there. One of my strengths and weaknesses is I have substantially more confidence than I have competence. And I would go into meetings early on at Advisa and I'm like, I'm crushing this. I'm like just talking, thinking I'm like, I'm the center of attention and not doing the things that we do so well at Advisa, which is facilitate conversations. Listen, draw out. Don't just be pouring in, draw like all the things that I've learned over my 15 years doing this. And Heather would pull me out and I'm feeling like, man, Nikki, I'm killing it. Like, it's great. And Heather's like, BJ, real quick, come here real quick. And I just look at her face and then she's like, quick chat. And I'm like, this, and I'm like, and I've had to eat that really quick. And then it was up to me. I'm like, am I going to own this or am I going to fight back? And those are like those transformative moments. Like, this is a split in the road. You can't pick both. I have to take it or not. So fortunately, we've had very few of those. If Heather's listening, but they have been transformative to me and it was not comfy.
Yeah. And I think that's the key of like, we stay stuck because we don't go through the stuff that's the not comfy, right? Your greatest growth happens in the failure moments and all of that. And I think that's where there's a bunch of this missed is we're not really getting in the trenches. I used that word earlier on purpose. So let's get in the trenches though with some of these stories. So I'm just going to play color with you because I know you've got stories for days and I might pick and prod and let's hear some.
Sure. Beautiful. Well, where I'd love to start is I could try to attack a few different levels of this for folks listening from whatever type of organization you're in. Hopefully what you'll hear in some of these stories will be relatively general in the fact that you could apply it, whether you're a medical manufacturing company, a frontline service organization, like whatever it is that you're doing, I can share some of these stories. So I'm going to actually lean in first to how long it takes to recognize what you just shared, Nikki, which is the discomfort, owning it, knowing what it is. So one of the first ones I want to start with is, and if you think about burnout on leadership teams, you go in and these are organizations where, like, let's say you're listening to this and well, our values are intact. They're great. We just did them. Or, hey, we did all this stuff and we just did them and everything else. So the activity that you got in there, and we have multiple clients that have been in this situation of a variety of sizes. But the organization I'm thinking about right now is they did all that work, which was out there work. I call it. I set my values. What do we are? What do we believe? It looked awesome on paper. One of these organizations has EOS in place, and it was just so neat and tidy. It was all, which is a great system if you have that in place. What was lacking in that situation is there wasn't anything embedded into their current situation. It was like a SWOT that was very surfacey, very opinion based, but it really didn't dive down into like which behaviors of the leadership team, the next level down, in our frontline people, which they had more of those stories than they had for the senior leadership team, are actually who we are. How are we capturing the behaviors? And like these ones are serving it. These ones tie into those values and these don't. At first, the problem was how do we actually capture that? Like, how do we, it seems like, is it managers? Do we get it from managers here and there? And the way that we looked at it, we ran assessments that got the feedback from the field and we pulled out patterns. So it wasn't as painful as you thought. So pulling that stuff out, you can get it from some engagement surveys, have it, other things that are topical like that can bring all those things to the forefront. The hard work when I get into owning your current situation, if we're talking about transformation with these things, is when you sit down with that leadership team, it's not a one sitting meal. And in that, what I say is I'm giving this feedback to you, Nikki, if you're on my executive team and I'm there and I'm in an HR leadership role, or I'm in some frontline leadership, or I'm on the executive team. Am I finding those moments where there's the ahas of recognition, like you had at that 56-hour event, where you're like, yeah, I put my feet down and I really bear in, I get defensive, or I cry. And at Advisa, we've seen both. By the way, if you're listening to this and you're trying this, those are great signs. That means we've hit something and we have to make a choice. So going where I started, burned out leadership team, hey, we have a lot of initiatives. The values are great. When we went in there and we started doing that work on mapping things back to the behaviors that we want, recognizing the leaders that are already doing some of those things, a lot of the roadmap and the infrastructure is already there. So it's not sometimes this overhaul of everything. You have one or two shining stars in a management role here and there. When you lean in on them and you elevate them, it starts to make it easier versus the fear. If I push in on that, yeah, like we have to change everything. And it just devalidates the work we've done and it devalidates that's the concern because we spent all this time and money in it. And when you go back down, like you talked about programs versus transformation, in there, now I have a lens that I can interrogate my programs. And you'll find out which programs are people's darlings. Well, we've been doing this and we love crucial conversations and we love this. Okay, is it serving the thing that we said we want to be in a year, in 2, 3 years? How do we know it is serving us? Employee sentiment, pulse surveys. Are you seeing the pull through? Oh, it's increasing our attention. And I would pressure test that. I know, Nikki, but is it because of that? Do we know that? So in pulling that all together, when you're thinking about that team, what we try to build is a more unifying system. What ends up happening, and if you're listening to this, is you actually end up doing less, far better. Because if you have a burned out leadership team, the assumption is, how do we have time for this? I come into a burned out leadership team's meetings, they're going right into metrics, business strategy and results. They're not lingering on anything else because they're burned out. Decision fatigue is rampant. I'm reaching for green lights and red lights everywhere. Just tell me what to do. Even the people like me, maybe like you, Nikki, maybe like I don't like to be told what to do ever. I'm exhausted at the end of the day. So when we bring in less and we start to focus on this is the core thing for now, for this stretch, for this core, you can build out a plan that when folks leave, They can see the transformation is something that they can do. Oh, you can pull a meeting or two off the calendar because we're going to stop that for now or for good if you really want to take a risk. And then it starts to flow. And I tell everybody when we're doing this, particularly when you're on something that is of near and dear importance. Well, this is the Monday morning stand-up. It's the Monday morning stand-up, Nikki. It happens at 7:30 every Monday morning. Like, okay, we have some hollow ground. I'm like, you know what, Nikki? If this doesn't work, we can go right back to that. We can go right back and pivot because we're in a cycle of listening at all levels of the organization. And we're not serving BJ or Nikki. We're serving these things that we've laid out as what we believe. So at the end of that story, in that particular case, when we started rolling those different pieces in, what ends up happening is you get a leader who's a little more light on their feet now. A leader that's a little bit more available. A leader that knows how to run one-on-ones that are very structured, similar, but based on the person they're talking to, take their own shape to serve the employee instead of checking a box. Tell me what's been going on this week, Nikki. Versus, hey, last time we spoke, Nikki, you were challenged by X, Y, and Z. I promised to do X, Y, and Z. How do you feel about my support? You start building a new relational flow. And if you take this to your personal life, and I'll kind of navigate out of this particular story in your personal life, just think about the regular meetings you have with the people that you love the most, that are enriching and fulfilling. And I think you're going to find the same almost exact elements. And when we get it right over here, and your leadership team is no longer burned out because they've integrated these things. We have systems in place to make those things happen. If you're in a position right now where you're seeing turnover, even at the frontline leadership level, what's going on? Let's get beyond, hey, we're not competitive with our pay and our benefits package. Let's get out of that. Let's assume that we are. This might be a good place to start, like we've done for these several companies. Like simplifying, re-aiming at things that we know are going to make the impact that we said we would make. And that increases, if you go back to that Atlas model, activation from the top, trust and shared beliefs. You're going to need to earn that trust up and down. And that sometimes, Nikki, is where most of the pain's involved, especially in those organizations. If they're burned over, I've seen this before. I saw it the last time. We changed again in mid-year. Staying the course once we've made this one, that's sometimes the hardest change for folks. Like, we got to stay. We're in year 2. We need to do something different. I'm going to need you to hold that tension for a little while longer because we promised the people and we heard from them. So that sometimes, particularly for entrepreneurial style leadership teams, results-driven leadership teams with low patience, sticking with it's the hardest part because I see the new shiny object.
Guilty.
Yep.
I have a couple of comments for you. So I love this thought that systems can look so buttoned up. We run the same agenda. We have this tracker. We do these quarterly sessions, but it can be a like smoke and mirrors a little bit if it's not making impact. Because you gave a couple of examples of systems, and some of those examples, I'm like, man, I've seen people crush those, right? But it can look so buttoned up, but it's really not making the impact. And I think that measurement piece, measuring the right things, is that source of truth to really know, like, is this making a difference? But don't just think because you've got buttoned up, beautiful systems that are so organized that they're working. We mentioned earlier, or you said, it's a great sign when you're crying or stomping off or whatever. We were saying that, knowing what that is, but I just want to comment on, it is not fun in the moment. Like, if somebody was going to sign me up for another one of those 56-hour like transformational weekends, I would probably figure out every excuse for a little bit. You know what I mean? But then I'd be happy I did it. But just like in the midst of it, it's tough. But on the other side, I'm like, I'm still telling stories way more than 15 years later about what that did for me. And that was just a profound story. I love the reminder of focusing on less strategically, and the example you shared about, and you have more capacity. We're all so busy. Oh, couldn't do that. Couldn't squeeze that in. Oh, forgot the one-on-one. But doing less allows us to then free up time to do the things that are really important. And then one more thing, because I'm really passionate about this, is this transformational work that we do in the office or on the team creates a better us for so many people on the baseball field, at our dinner table, at our church, wherever we are a better person that is ripple affecting and making the world better because of that work That is such a profound thing. And when we really do that hard work and champion that, yes, it's hard. And for the person that's saying like, we need to do this, and they're not going to like this. Okay. And then that person that says yes, and they do that hard work, man, it's really making the world better.
Mm. And two things off that might be helpful.
Yeah.
That I've seen in action is, and you've heard the comment, like, if you're not full, like if your cup isn't full, how are you going to pour in other people? And I think that lines up what's going on. I think what happens is there's this Pollyannish view of people of like work-life balance. And I think it's probably one of the bigger disconnects in the generational workforces. When they're hearing things from like Gen Z and even younger now coming into the workplace, they're hearing things that they haven't heard before, but it's like they're seeking this integrated life. And so at work, well, why would I want to talk about someone's personal values at work? Like that's kind of their own. It's been this distancing. That's all coming back together right now because folks that know their own values, if a person coming out of college, like I've done the work, they're going to expect you as an organization to have done the work. And they look at their values and they see the behavior that follows over that says, hey, a person that believes those things would be behaving this way. They're measuring you against that. They're measuring their manager against that. So if you're a manager and you've been in the game for a while, you maybe never been challenged. Like, what do you believe about the world, about what you want, about where you're at? Some of them haven't had that formation. So they're in a weaker position to live out company values. Why? Well, you don't even have any. Or they're very surfacey. They can speak about a religious context, a philosophy. I'm a coach. It's just at this upper level, but it doesn't turn into like nitty gritty behavior that's getting demanded from their teams. So that's sometimes the cry moment or angry moment. I don't want to share that at work. You can do whatever you want. Do you want to engage your team or not? And if it's important to them and they're talking about it, there's a lean in opportunity for you to even say, hey, this is super uncomfortable to me. And if you have like a 55-year-old guy that's been in the game a while that goes in and says that, they don't recognize that's actually credibility building. With that team, that recognition of curiosity, openness to grow, which means you're what? Open to listen, open to get feedback. It's safe to talk to you again because you aren't this like in a box person right there. So that's one connection like back I wanted to resonate on, particularly for the people that are like stuck. Yeah, but how do I get balance? Like, how do I stay off my phone at my kid's soccer game on a Saturday morning? It's making those decisions for yourself because sometimes people are in the behavior, but in their own lives, they haven't navigated. Who are you in 5 years? Some of the relationships we don't think about enough is Nikki at the end of the year, evaluating Nikki now. Nikki in 5 years, when you're whatever age and your family's whatever age, what do you want to be able to say? When you go through those are sometimes relationships that can be super functional in the moment. Ooh, I shouldn't do that. I got to talk to me later. I'm going to have to talk to me later again, and I don't want to be saying that. So that was one checkpoint. The other one, which is really tactical, and in your podcast, I know it's guts and science. Like, let's get into the nitty gritty. I challenge everybody to do two things. One is open up your calendar, Google, Outlook, whatever you use, and look how many days you have cascaded meetings. All right. So when we go back to tangible, how do I build trust and shared purpose? And at the level, it can be confronting. I've had to deal with this a lot. And you see 3 of them side by side that other people are attached to. What message am I sending? We have people preparing or maybe preparing or not. Is BJ going to be there? Are you going to do this one? And in my heart of hearts, I already know which one's the priority. Yet what do? I leave them sit there. My team sees the calendar. And what behavior do they do? Oh, well, like that's what we do. We cascade them all. I had one day where from like 8 a.m. all the way to 5 p.m., there was no break at all. As if I never need to eat. I never need to use the restroom. I'm like, this is a lie. This whole thing is a lie. It's just not going to happen this way. I'm lying when I walk right into work that day. So some of the little tweaks we make are like a system in organization is, hey, there's like 15-minute buffers after every meeting. For what? Doing the work we know we have to squeeze into a whole day. So it doesn't roll into 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and you're flipping up your laptop after you put your kids to bed. And they think, well, we're going to miss work. I'm like, you're not at 3 places at once, Nikki. You're at 1 place at once. Just tell people that earlier and it'll reach. But there's a fear. What if that breaks? Then I'm going to be available for that one. Well, let it be a fun surprise that you can now show up at the next thing or whatever. So that's one tactical thing that I've worked, particularly in one-to-one coaching with executives when they struggle for space. Yeah, but just look at this. I'm like, I am looking at this. And we're going to talk about these things relative to what you just told me. So that was one. The second one, which is an exercise I do with teams, that when I hear we're busy, we have a lot of burnout. There's really no time. When someone comes in and I say, hey, this session's gonna be 90 minutes. Can you do it in 15? And I'm like, no, my team doesn't have time. Finally push them. All right, you're gonna get 60 minutes. I go in, I'm like, hey, I hear like everybody does, are we all busy? We're probably too busy for this. I see some people already on their phones. You're likely probably all ready to go because you got real work to do. I can understand. And they're like, all right, this guy understands. He's gonna wrap it together. Hey, real quick, what I'd love everybody to do, because what I'm gonna talk about will involve time. It's going to involve change, and you might have to add some things before you subtract some things. But we don't have time for that, do we? No. I love everybody to open screen time up on their phone real quick for me. And you see faces just turn white. Hey, by the way, no judgment, whatever. I just want you to look at YouTube and then anything that could be considered social media. Just real quick. Just look, don't share. Don't have to share. I'm like, no, go actually do it. And it's just like this fear rolls over everybody that they realize, I'm like, all right, hey, listen, I'm not going to press you. But did everybody find at least an hour? Did everybody find one? Just in that. Did everybody find? All right, cool. So, hey, does everybody feel, hey, let's take a breath together. I won't steal any more of that. And there's still probably some to spare. Don't raise your hand. Some of us might have 4. So there's a couple different tangible ways for a leader. You could even do that with your team. And I could challenge you to do it. Hey, everyone pull out here and then show yours if you really want to be a boss. Hey, I spent 3 hours yesterday on YouTube and it was not work. That's a real opening for a real conversation as to where people are spending, particularly when you're dealing with burned out frontline leaders or even employees that you're dealing with. There's those little instances that can shake up a meeting, which is a system, make it different, make it engaging. And then when I leave there, how might that actually affect like what you shared before, my home life? You know what? Like we can do dinner better. Hey, where we spend our time at, we could probably, I just learned today that I spend 4 hours a day on not work stuff and not stuff that elevates my relationships. What are you doing? By the way, now we tell everybody, you keep doing what you're doing. If you love it, if you're on your way, you keep doing it. But those are kind of a couple examples I thought might be useful for folks to hear.
So good. So good. These, some of these are small tweak things that make such a big difference. Like you were saying earlier, another takeaway that I loved was that if we focus on less, it's the opposites of what we think, right? Oh, this little thing couldn't do that big of a change, but it could. Or we could take these 3 things off and make such a bigger impact. We have to retrain our brain, unlearn.
Yeah. And when it comes back to what, like, I think you shared at the end of the last comment is turn it into data.
Yeah.
We did this. We're all going to group commit to this for the next 2 months. And we're going to sit back here and we're going to evaluate. If it went better, pull all that data at the front end. I will be able to do. Get your things that if my team was in a better position, what would I hear them saying versus I'm so burned out. I don't even feel like I could take my PTO. I don't feel like, all right, if you could, instead of them saying that, what would they say? Instead of just, well, they just won't say that. All right. That's not nothing. But what would they say? Hey, work last week felt great. I felt like I had a ton of wins. I was able to leave at 3:30 on one of those days to do this thing for myself and I got all the work done. And you're looking at your metrics, I promise you, as you hear more of that, the fear you have, the productivity will go down. It's actually the opposite that happens. So,
because we know our stuff, right? We know what it takes to be successful. We've got our recipe book and it's like, if you're done by 3:30, I'm not just filling the time, right? So much of this is around stop checking the box and move towards impact. Okay. Want to pivot over to another story of BJ's?
Yep. I love it. So let's hit this one. So if you're listening to this and you're hearing from your managers that your frontline managers might be struggling with holding people accountable. I think there's probably some people raised there like, hey, we're trying, we just can't get them to do X, Y, and Z. You have a frontline leadership team as they're hearing those different things. What ends up happening in those cycles, maybe you're happening at your organizations, is they think there's a knowing problem when it's a doing problem. Oh, they don't know that they need it. They don't know. So you get a lot of frontline leaders out there hearing from senior executives and what have you on all of their different divisions of, hey, we need to be doing, it's a very metrics ends related conversation. That's their job. The frontline leader's job, if we talk about frontline leaders, is they just have like individual contributors rolling up to them. Their job is different. So the knowing, when they come down and just carry that voice down to the frontline level, what their people can tend to hear is, all right, you don't think we're very smart. Like you're probably not even listening to us. And they just keep getting louder. And then when they think about accountability, even when I say that word, hey, we're gonna have an accountability conversation, I don't really think like something great's about to happen to me. So when we bring that up in organizations, it's like, oh boy, we have an accountability. We're going to be talking about accountability again. So with your frontline leaders, if you're hearing that from them, or you're one of those frontline leaders, like, I'm struggling with getting accountability at the frontline level. If you shrink the world to you, individual frontline leader, shrink the world to you. And this is kind of the work we do, is we use a behavioral assessment called predictive index. That's one way we use it. You could use EQ assessments. Some tool is sometimes helpful to get you thinking about the two key things: self-awareness and self-management. That's the two of the keys that unlock leadership. And like all the data, and I'm sure you've had plenty of folks in this podcast that talk about, what's one of the key patterns and like the greatest leaders, and self-awareness is always a greatest hit. Like, they have that self-awareness.
Yeah. What are a couple of the typical light bulbs? Like, what do you hear when after they like look at this, and then the awareness light bulb of like, oh, what are examples?
Well, I think one example is we had a leader that was doing good management when they shared it with us, but they were sending notes and they weren't getting any follow through by anybody. So there's your accountability hole, but they were only doing it via email. So they were managing and doing all this stuff via email. So there wasn't any peel back. So when we pushed, the aha moment was like, hey, talk to me about your one-to-ones. Well, I don't really have those. We don't really need those. This lack of importance in actually connecting with my team. I'm like, oh, like, how many direct reports do you have? Oh, I have 10. And then when you play back to them their experience at their manager, where's their priority? Somewhere else. They are actively somewhere else. They're communicating me on an on-demand based on their schedule. They're not meeting my schedule. They're not pinning down time for me. I've had managers' eyes just open up and be like, whoa. And especially when I do relationship buildups before that, like, what's your best relationship? What's the most productive relationship in your life, in your life, in your life? And then I'll play it back right there. And like, imagine if you interacted with your girlfriend that way. I wouldn't have a girlfriend. You don't say. You don't say. And I'm like, these are people too, and you are important to them and they matter. So I think there's one moment where like someone has an aha. Another one is do what I say, not what I do. Where you would see leaders that they come up from the front lines, they get in because they're a great individual contributor, and they get in the role with almost zero leadership formation. They don't really know how to be a leader. They're a great engineer. They're a great product person. They're a great marketer, or they're a great salesperson. And they get in that role, like, so you probably a lot of people in here talk about that, and they start doing what they think is management, which is essentially just like, I'm going to come in and be better at your job than you. And how I deal with that is we play it back to them like, what if you, and after I talk about their manager, I'm like, hey, can I tell you about a scenario, a situation? I kind of disconnect them from it. I tell them a story, and essentially the story I tell them is them managing them. And they're like, that would be awful.
That would be terrible.
Everything I just replayed to you was how you manage your team right now. And that's another moment where they're like, oh, I'm telling them what to do. I'm flying in. I always call like inflicting myself on my team instead of being additive. Like, your job is to make their job like way easier. Your job is to like accelerate. Your job is to be 6 months to a year ahead. Your job, how much of that are you doing? I'm too busy with what? Carrying a book, making sales calls, helping build this product. So they invited you in to do that. So like you're strategically in there, or it's like you just are comfortable. I got promoted and I'm in this job because of that, but it's a different job. So those are two examples that I would probably share.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks for sharing that. I think there's just a reminder on the power of tools like a predictive index for self-awareness being just as valuable as the tools that we use for our data insights on the things that matter, right? It's like we use this tool, we know it so well, and man, it creates light bulb moments for awareness. And then over here, we know our metrics, and other people know their scorecard, and we're working on the things that matter, and we're measuring the data, right? Like those kinds of tools are just so helpful. Like if you don't feel like you're like, oh yeah, I've got that. And it's like when you have that, the feeling is like, yeah, like I can feel it.
Well, and I think that if you go back to like a lot of what Heather talked about before, and like the Atlas model and making cultural change, and we talked earlier about transformation, that at some point, once we make our calls as to what the aim is, it can go down to granular level. Frontline manager that runs a division in Omaha. And it doesn't matter where you're at. Once you set the aims and once you say how you're going to do it, the hardest part After that part is the reps. It's like doing the reps day after day, long. And you tell yourself, how do people get to the Olympics? It's not the Olympics. It's 4 years of reps, probably 10 years before that, of things that look very boring, very the same, very regimented, very routine. It's like the opposite sometimes. Or overnight success companies. I'm like, there's nothing more offensive, I think, than saying that out loud.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, they were an overnight success. I'm like, did they say that? I bet they didn't say that. They didn't win the lottery. I promise you. That's not how it happened. And I also, I relay this back to like personal fitness and like going to the gym. Oh, I went for 8 hours this week on a Monday. I'm good. No, you're not. You're sore and exhausted. But were you fit when it was over? I would say the same thing about your culture. Is your culture fit? Is it there? No, we're on the way, we're doing it. But I think sometimes those individual reps that for like a leader, what's a rep? An email, a direct message, a Teams message, a one-to-one meeting, a co-client meeting, a team. These are your reps to do the new things, to install that. It's not like adding things on to the stuff that's already there. It's like adjusting those things and then sticking to your guns. And another one there, and Heather really built this, and we've done a great job with it, I think, at Advisa over my 15 years, is connection before content. In our meetings, we have a connect. It's about 5 to 6 minutes of building connection with each other. There's some question, there's some prompt or something, and now it's just something we do. We sometimes do it when we're having sales meetings. We like build and do a little exercise, and no one's ever said stop. No one's ever said, I don't want to talk about this interesting thing that involves me. I want to get down to business. It opens up, and we're actually whole people when we're having these conversations.
Well, I have a whole list of takeaways for my outro here in a few minutes that I'm going to share. But the one that you're calling me out on, you're like, and Nikki, this might get a little uncomfortable for you too. I'm like, did you have to hit on the stick with the system so many times in different ways? Do the reps. Don't change it unless it's broken. Like, just stick with it. Because I think there's a lot of us that are in a leadership seat and we get I don't know if it's shiny object necessarily, but we could do that better. We could do this different, right? And it's like, but why? Unless it's broken. Let's stick with it. Let's keep doing the reps. This is so good.
I have two other quick things that might be helpful. One is I've seen very poor business strategies succeed far more than great ones. I've seen it because they got this stuff right. It wasn't the most efficient. It wasn't even the most effective, but they had they had cultural, they had a team, they had strong value. There was other things in place that weren't the business strategy. And I'm looking at this could be, and I joke, I'm like, if you ever get rid of me, I'm going to compete against them. Why? Because I could just tune that up, and I see those things. You see it. So it's not always, I have this elite business strategy, and you'd rather have a way better one. You would, but you can make a lot of what you have working. And then the minute you see someone else's programming, whatever it is, everyone in your team thinks that's probably better. Oh, I heard this thing. I want to do this thing. And as a leader, I can understand that tension point. Is this archaic? Am I doing that because we always did it this way? I don't want to be that person. Like, those are art and science, like, moments. Like, that's being a leader. It's your call. And sometimes I don't want it to be. I want it to be very tangible, what's the right thing to do. The second piece is, I don't want to leave without talking about this, is some people listening have folks at the upper level of the organization. They're very skeptical about culture. When you say culture, they go woo-woo. Isn't that HR's problem? Is that, like, they kind of dissipate it, or they talk about it in grand statements, but their behavior doesn't follow that path. In that, when you go, if you're listening to this, you go into the KPIs and things that matter to those leaders. If you're sitting with the leaders that you feel like, I need you behind me, and you don't get it, the best way to navigate over to that, and if someone's not in their head at this, great. What is the language of that leader that you're looking to influence? Because sometimes you're trying to pitch to them. We need to do this. We need to do this. We need this. What do they already care about? What do they always talk about? What do the people who they put their front name on their paycheck believe that they care most about? Most leaders, if you pay enough attention, they've written a book as to what they're trying to get out of this. And the best path to getting them to get behind efforts to change cultures at the job level, team level, leader level, is to know that it clearly, cleanly maps to them winning, whatever that is. And we do ourselves a disservice when we try to teach them new language that isn't theirs. and then force them to do the work of getting it back to why we will decrease retention, increase sales, maximize growth, decrease whatever it is that they're talking about. It's much better to start in their world, walking side by side with the challenges and frustrations and being honest, and then moving back out. Why I think a lot of people don't do it is lack of confidence in that conversation. Like, what do I know about that? Another one is fear that my ideas won't fit in. Like fear that I'm going to get tangible pushback. Like, what am I going to do? It could affect my current budget. There's some conservatism that like can stick in, but I promise you, if you lean into that moment, if you want to make an assumption, assume someone really wasn't listened to that day. They didn't feel heard. They didn't feel understood. You know, they want to hear you repeat a few things in the words that that's the easiest bet. And you're probably going to come out on the right side. And that goes for your CEO. That goes for your president. That goes for your VP of ops or your VP of marketing. Try it. Especially when you're sensing that skepticism, that sense of diminishing, that like there's a cultural thing going on here. If you start there and map it back, I'm sure in your mind, if you're listening to this, you're already thinking about like, oh, I started here and I'm making them work. They're already busy. They are all the things we talked about earlier, Nikki. They haven't put the time into this. And if we could just make it easier for them, we can move them there. And I'm actually meeting with the team in an hour and a half from now, where we're about to wed that connection. And we've done, in this case, it's been 8 months. 8 months of a listening journey, a data gathering journey, all in an effort to, number one, clarify what's important to them in their own words, map their current situation to what they said they wanted, hold them accountable. So if you kept doing what you're currently doing, your confidence level, 0 to 10, that you're going to get there. And if it was a 10, what would be true? In the what would be true, now you have your bridge. That's the bridge. And by the way, if they don't say it, it's not on the bridge. You're taking a risk. Did you build a bridge back to what they said was important? And at the end of this conversation we're going to have later today is I'm going to be with executives, not doing it for them. They're going to be making some of these choices. We're doing that. We're not doing this for the long haul, which we're thinking 2 to 3 years.
For anyone who's never read the book, I think it's To Sell is Human, where really understanding
That Daniel Pink.
Yeah, that's what's coming to me. I'm like trying to remember, but the whole concept of life, like meeting people where they are, no matter what we're trying to do. It's like we're a volunteer for an organization and we're trying to get someone to donate food, right? It's not necessarily sales, but you're showing up with the same things as in this case, like meeting someone with their skepticism and trying to bring them along, right? I think that's the book. Well, I'll have to go back and make sure I'm right. But it was just bringing some of those things up. And I'm a passionate salesperson to, sell for a reason, sell for impact. And a lot of this stuff is so similar. Well, BJ, this has been so fun. And I think we'll be doing a lot more podcasting experiences together. So this isn't the only one. But for today, we're going to head on over to our lightning round before I do our wrap up on my whole list of truth you can act on, aside from the do the reps, Nikki. So here's our quick lightning round. We always start with your favorite book of all time or a favorite recent read for you to add to our ever-growing list that will put your name and recommendation there.
I'm going to go with the one I'm reading now, which is The Art of the Gathering by Priya Parker. Actually have it right here, The Art of the Gathering. And why it's impacting me is with the rise of AI. And I've heard on your shows, you've been talking about that a lot more and more. What hasn't changed is us. And we even talked about it today, meetings, one-to-ones, they're all gatherings. And the lack of intentionality that we bring to it makes them less fulfilling. And her whole book is about all these gatherings of like dignitaries and parties and like different races and all of these things. And the thought of how it's organized creates the experience when people gather. So it's been challenging to me about what I put out there. It's been slapping me on the wrist of, you did this wrong. And it's been giving me these new questions to challenge people with to make their gatherings within their organizations a heck of a lot more engaging.
Thank you for that. So, how often do you tap dance these days? And is that ever part of the transformational, like get uncomfortable thing that you do with leaders? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think you're referencing. I took what people might not know is back through later elementary school all the way through middle school. I took dance, not like I learned how to like dance in gym class. Like I took dance. I was like the one guy essentially that was in the dance company with all the girls. And I thought that it was because I was great, when it turns out I was the only guy. So I got to be on stage a lot. So yeah, the only tap dancing, I mean, I always love a good wedding reception. I'm
Uh-huh.
always ready. I'm locked and loaded for a good wedding reception.
That's great.
But now it's just tap dancing with executive teams around the elephant in the room is sometimes where I do most of my dance moves.
That's so cool. And most people know BJ in the gym. Like you have a very lengthy background in the gym, lots of stories there. But tell us about the nerdy side of BJ.
Yeah, it's like in my spare time, if someone asked me about a Netflix series or a movie or things like that, you'll probably just see me blank out. I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, really? There's so many good shows. I'm like, that's why I don't do that. Like my wife and I, a big shared interest along with our kids is like we're just book nerds. I'll have 5 or 6 books with me everywhere I go. Sometimes I think it's like my little blankie, or like where I take with me because I'm scared to death of boredom. But I'm always reading 5 or 6 different books at a time, and it's just it dials me down, it slows me down, gets me off of screens. It's been that way since I left. I think I've learned probably 50x more since I graduated with my master's degree than I have in my whole education career since then. So you see us, we have a growing library room in our house, my wife and my 6 kids and I, and that's a shared interest. And every time one of my kids finishes a book, there's an unlimited budget for me to buy the next one. So it's this constant flow of moving it. And like I said, like I got to behave it out. If I'm not carrying books around and reading them, you should read. I'm going to go watch TV, which by the way, when football season comes around, I'm back on TV watching sports. But yeah, I love reading.
And what a cool system for 6 kids to make as a habit and norm as a family reading, right? Like just like you just said, after your master's degree, the reading has grown you immensely. So cool. That's so cool. And 6 kids. Wow. Well, BJ, whether someone is wanting to reach out about your reading list this week in the future or anything they heard, just want to connect with you, what's the best way?
You can connect with me via email if you just want to talk to me personally about anything, your organization, even, like personally, your like career path or situations like that. You can email me at BMcKay. That's B as in boy McKay at advisa.com. If you're more comfortable, like on LinkedIn, I'm pretty active there. You can just go BJ McKay. I'm actually, looks like I'm on here wearing the same exact shirt on my little
Perfect.
LinkedIn. So if you go
On
there, like,
brand.
is he wearing that same shirt? I guess this is like my podcast shirt or what have you. Yeah. And so BJ McKay on LinkedIn, you'll see my name is Brian BJ McKay. Brian BJ McKay on LinkedIn is a good way to find me.
BJ, thank you for joining Gut Plus Science, and you crushed it with those stories. We were talking about culture change that sticks and all that goes with that, really what you're seeing on the front lines. And, gosh, the key takeaway for me is transformational action is not comfy. There's a lot to do there and it's hard work, but gosh, it makes such an impact. Here's my truth you can act on from today's episode. Number 1, transformation requires discomfort. True transformation isn't found in the polished programs or clean agendas. It's like getting in the trenches, doing the uncomfortable, messy work. And that's when it's working, is when you feel those things where we're confronting hard truths and failures and really reflecting and looking in the mirror. It's the stuff that stretches us. Number 2, systems can look great, but fail without impact. We talked about a very polished, pretty looking system that it looks great, but what is it really doing? The end results, the outcomes. So, there's many different systems out there. The point is the measurement component is the real source of truth. Is this system actually moving the needle? So it can be polished and pretty and tight. And we need to make sure that the source of truth is the measurement, the impact. Number 3, focus on less and do those better. Burnout comes when we have too much on our plate, and less to focus on gives us more time to make bigger impact on those particular initiatives. So just reflecting and thinking through and not add, maybe subtract, and really hone in, focus really helps us do better work. Number 4, leadership growth ripples into every part of life. The better we become as a leader, the more self-aware, emotionally intelligent, all the things. And so at work, when we're doing the hard, messy work, the world around work gets uplifted. And that's just a cool thing to think about. Number 5, self-awareness and consistent reps are the game, the reps. Tools like predictive index help leaders develop our self-awareness, and Advisa uses predictive index every day with all their clients. And then we have to realize it's not just awareness, it's about the action and the reps, the repetition, the consistency. I love that reminder. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you all next time.
We just left the world a little bit better. Now, go do something with it.